Welcome back to Stoic Capsule. Today, we're diving into a subject that might just change the way you carry yourself in every room you enter. Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that one person who barely speaks, yet somehow everyone pays attention? They don't shout, they don't beg for notice, and yet their presence dominates. Why? Because in a world where people confuse noise with power, true influence moves in silence. Real strength doesn't rush, it observes, it waits. And when the moment is right, it strikes calmly, decisively, without warning. This isn't about cruel manipulation. It's about mastering the subtle tactics that most people completely overlook, the kind of strategies that allow you to win before the fight even begins. What you're about to discover isn't just strategy, it's discipline, it's clarity, it's the art of restraint and control. Stay with me, because these principles of silent power might change how you move, think, and influence from this day forward. Silence has always been misunderstood. The louder someone shouts, the more they reveal their fear. The faster someone threatens, the more they expose their insecurity. But the one who speaks little, who lets their quiet confidence command the room, carries a power that cannot be faked or borrowed. That's the foundation of true mastery, not in loud declarations, but in deliberate stillness. Machiavelli recognized this centuries ago. He knew empires weren't built by brute force alone, but by psychological control, patience, and concealment. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't flinch at insults. It doesn't beg for recognition. Instead, it studies from the shadows, thinking 10 steps ahead while others can barely handle the next one. And here's the paradox. The man who no longer feels the need to prove anything has, in fact, proven everything. His silence is not weakness. It's a mirror, one that forces others to confront their own insecurities. That's the trick, isn't it? You don't chase, you don't shout, you let your calm unravel them. You leave no reaction, no crack in your armor, and they are left battling their own imagination. But make no mistake, this kind of restraint doesn't come overnight. It's forged through failures, humiliations, countless trials, and hours of disciplined stillness. It's the power of carrying silence, like a hidden blade, knowing exactly what others will do next, while they wonder what you're thinking. This is the essence of Stoic control, not the absence of action, but the deliberate choice of when and how to act. The world rewards those who resist the urge to reveal their hand too soon. When you walk into a room and people turn to watch, not because you demand it, but because your mystery commands respect, you've tapped into real influence. So let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them wonder. You don't need to explain. You don't need to justify. You keep building quietly, deliberately, and without permission. Because once you've mastered silence, you've mastered yourself. And when you've mastered yourself, there's nothing left for anyone to use against you. Perception. That's where every battle is truly won or lost. Whether it's a conversation, a competition, or a direct confrontation, the outcome is rarely dictated by pure truth. Instead, perception is the real battlefield. And here's the catch: it doesn't begin when tempers flare or when voices rise. It begins the moment others lay their eyes on you. Why? Because people don't respond to what is. They respond to what appears to be. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He once wrote that men judge more by the eye than by the hand. And he was right. Few will ever know your deepest intentions, but everyone will see your composure, your tone, your calm or the lack of it. This is why appearance becomes such a decisive weapon. The one who can master how they are seen gains the upper hand long before the first move is made. It's not always about being correct, and it's not even about being the strongest. It's about appearing composed, focused, and unshakable, especially in moments when you are not. When people witness your calm in the midst of chaos, they begin to doubt their own footing. And that moment of hesitation, that flicker of uncertainty, is already your silent victory. A Stoic knows this truth well. Control over the self naturally creates influence over others. Emotional chaos pushes power away, while inner stillness draws it in. A Machiavellian figure doesn't interrupt. They observe. They don't flinch when insulted. They wait. They let others speak first, not out of courtesy, but to gather information, to collect ammunition. They don't need to outshout their opponent. They win by letting others expose themselves, and then quietly turning those words into weapons. That isn't cruelty. It's discipline, the art of shaping perception in a world governed by appearances. You don't need to crush an opponent outright. You only need to ensure that they appear unstable, while you remain composed. In a society addicted to optics, the one who seems calm is treated as wise. The one who stays silent is assumed to be calculating, and the one who shows restraint when everyone else unravels is elevated to almost mythic stature. But let's be clear, this is not deception for deception's sake. It is strategic restraint. In a world that confuses volume with substance, you don't need to reveal the truth. You only need to control how the truth is perceived. Let them rage. Let them over-explain. Let them perform. Meanwhile, you remain. The stillness that unsettles them. Because, in the end, power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room, nor even to the most intelligent. It belongs to the one who can shape the story being told. And the strongest stories aren't shouted from a stage, they are seen. In your posture, in your eyes, in your calm presence, in your refusal to be moved. In a world addicted to spectacle, the one who refuses to perform becomes the most feared. That is when you stop needing to fight. Because you have already become the presence no one dares to challenge. You shape the field. You set the terms. Direct confrontation might look courageous, but more often than not, it is a trap, a trigger for ego, resistance, and chaos. True power doesn't smash into another's nature. It works around it. It reshapes the very environment they move in until their actions, though seemingly free, are guided by the boundaries you designed. This is the quiet brilliance behind environmental manipulation. The Stoics taught us to control only what lies within our reach, and while another person's mind may be beyond your grasp, the conditions they operate in are not. So instead of forcing someone to change, you change the space they must navigate. Think of conflict like a chessboard. The true objective isn't to destroy every piece, it's to control the board itself. You don't need to eliminate your opponent. You only need to adjust the timing, the terrain, the momentum. Every subtle adjustment creates ripples, a rescheduled meeting, a quiet change in access, the strategic removal of an ally. Each of these seemingly minor shifts chips away at your opponent's balance. And before they even realize what has happened, they are no longer responding with strength, but with confusion. Fatigue sets in, small mistakes accumulate, and with every misstep, they serve your plan without ever knowing it. This is not deception for its own sake. It is influence through precision. Environmental manipulation doesn't aim to humiliate, it aims to exhaust, to reshape the frame so completely that your adversary begins to move according to your rhythm, not theirs. Isn't that the mark of true mastery? To guide others without forcing them, to lead them into choices that feel like their own. This is how seasoned negotiators win without ever raising their voices. It's how a Stoic leader governs, not by making demands, but by designing conditions where the right decision becomes the only decision. Instead of wrestling endlessly with someone's stubborn emotions or chaotic beliefs, you simply shift the environment around them, tilt the frame, alter the light, change the floor beneath their feet, and suddenly their next move feels inevitable. By the time they notice what has happened, it's already too late. The damage is done, and it wasn't achieved with brute force, but through the quiet rearrangement of reality itself. That is why the true battlefield is not a physical place, it's a construct, a mental and emotional field shaped with patience, foresight, and restraint. The one who controls the environment doesn't need to control people directly, they only need to control the options. Because when every road leads to the outcome you've already chosen, you've won without ever drawing a weapon. And that, in the Stoic sense, is the highest form of dominance. Not domination over others, but mastery over the structure they must operate within. Success here is subtle. It isn't measured by applause, attention, or recognition. It is measured by how little you had to force, and how naturally events seemed to fall into place. There is great strength in being underestimated. In a world obsessed with appearances, where power must be visible and dominance must roar, the most dangerous move is often silence. To appear harmless is not weakness, it is a weapon sharpened by wisdom. The Stoics taught that a wise man does not need to announce his strength. He allows it to remain hidden, disciplined, controlled. Machiavelli, in his own words, echoed the same truth. Think of the predator who makes himself known. He invites caution, and his prey becomes guarded. But the one who limps, who apologizes, who plays the fool, he invites carelessness. And in carelessness, opportunity is born. To feign weakness is not to be weak. It is to master the rhythm of perception. It is to lull the room into comfort while you observe, calculate, and prepare. You are not surrendering. You are setting the stage. You are not being submissive. You are drawing out arrogance. You are letting your enemy overextend, exposing what matters most, convinced you are beneath them. That is not cowardice, it is composure. It is the art of letting the other move first, not because you fear them, but because you know a sword drawn too soon is dulled in the wrong battle. True power is patient. It waits beneath the surface, cloaked in humility, until the exact moment when precision matters more than volume. The Stoics knew this well. He who conquers himself, who holds his fire, who plays the fool with purpose, often ends up controlling not just the conflict, but the story that follows. Machiavelli once warned that a ruler must be both lion and fox. The lion roars, the fox vanishes, only to return with an advantage. When you pretend to retreat, when you appear to bend or concede, you are not giving up, you are redirecting the current. You allow them to believe they've won, and in that illusion lies your true power. Because arrogance blinds more effectively than rage, and the blind, in their pride, walk straight into traps they would have avoided had they respected you from the start. So let them mock you, let them feel safe, let them speak freely, and, in doing so, reveal themselves. Your silence is not weakness, it is timing. Your delay is not indecision, it is design. And when the right moment comes, you strike, not with fury, but with clarity, not where they expect resistance, but where their guard is weakest. By the time realization dawns, it will already be too late to respond. To feign weakness is not to surrender, it is to seize control of the narrative itself. It is the highest form of strategic patience, and when executed properly, victory does not come from brute force. It comes from the quiet recognition that the battle was won long before it even began. And yet, when confrontation becomes truly unavoidable, there is one rule above all: finish it. The power of decisiveness cannot be overstated. Half measures never preserve peace, they only prolong conflict. A wounded adversary does not walk away in silence. They retreat into shadows, nursing their humiliation until it hardens into vengeance. Machiavelli warned us clearly: if you strike but leave your adversary with dignity, support, or the illusion of strength, you've not ended the battle, you've delayed its next chapter. This is not cruelty. This is the architecture of peace. Through closure, the Stoics remind us, mercy without clarity is not virtue, it is negligence. And negligence always carries a price. Because in the arena of power, the most dangerous enemy is not the one who fights openly, but the one you allow to linger, to breathe, to recover. Pain becomes obsession. Obsession fuels revenge. You may believe you are showing restraint, but what you are actually creating is a future problem, one that will return with sharper teeth. That is why true dominance, the kind that never needs to be repeated, demands finality. No lingering doubts, no shared territory, no overlapping circles. If you must confront, and it so decisively that there is no sequel to be written. This does not always mean destruction in the literal sense. It often means erasure as psychological closure. It means removing their influence, cutting off their access, ending their narrative entirely. In personal matters, this may look like silence, distance, and unapologetic departure. No farewells, no explanations, just the kind of exit that leaves no door to knock on. In business or politics, it means outmaneuvering not only your rival, but their entire support system, isolating them until their relevance withers on its own. This is not cruelty, it is discipline. The Stoics taught us to control only what lies within our reach, And in conflict, the one thing entirely within your control is the ending. So let your final action speak louder than any threat. Make it swift, clean, and emotionless. Do not gloat. Do not broadcast. Simply vanish. And let the echo of your decisiveness do the rest. That echo alone is enough. It reminds others that testing you has a cost, and that cost is not negotiable. Because the truly untouchable do not leave loose ends. They do not replay battles they've already won. They do not linger on conquered ground. The moment you hesitate, rebuild. Because the very moment you show leniency, your opponent begins to strategize. And the instant you offer a second chance, they no longer see mercy, they see weakness. That is why decisiveness is not just another tactic. It is a shield. It is what protects you from ever having to fight the same war twice. So finish it. Not with cruelty, but with mastery. Not for the sake of ego, but for the sake of peace. Because only when no one dares to reignite the conflict have you truly won not just the battle, but your freedom from it. And that, more than anything, is the highest form of power. Not merely victory, but irreversible, unquestionable closure. Now, let's turn to a different form of power, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't strike, and yet leaves the deepest scars. It is the power of reflection, not retaliation. The Stoics taught that influence over others begins first with mastery of the self. And Machiavelli understood that the most enduring fear is not the one imposed from the outside, but the one awakened from within. Think about it. True fear does not come from threats. It comes from silence, the kind of silence that forces a man to confront himself. When you raise your voice, people instinctively defend themselves. But when you say nothing, their defense turns inward. They start asking questions about you, about themselves, about what might come next. And in that ambiguity, your influence takes root. To hold up a psychological mirror is to master misdirection. You let them project their own insecurities, their own doubts, onto the space between you. You provide no confirmation, no denial, no reaction. And in that void, they begin filling in the blanks, often with their own darkest fears. You don't need to spread rumors. You simply refuse to address them. You don't need to threaten. You just remain still, unshaken, unreadable. And suddenly every glance, every pause, every absence becomes a riddle they cannot solve. The human mind is not designed to live in uncertainty. It craves resolution. And when it cannot find one, it begins to unravel, slowly, quietly, internally. This is not cruelty. It is discipline. It is the art of psychological clarity. The recognition that panic often doesn't come from what you have done, but from the stories someone tells themselves in response to your silence. This is precisely what Machiavelli meant when he advised rulers to appear capable of great consequences even if those consequences never come. Because the mere possibility is often more powerful than the act itself. When fear is born of imagination, it has no boundaries. It has no ceiling. It becomes infinite. In a reactive world, stillness itself becomes disturbing. When you do not respond, you offer no validation. When you do not retaliate, you give no direction. And without direction, fear spirals inward. They begin to see ghosts where none exist, Every quiet second becomes a sentence. Every unspoken word becomes a threat. You become powerful not by what you do to them, but by what you allow them to do to themselves. So hold up the mirror. Let them face their own reflection. Let their guilt, their insecurity, and their unspoken motives bubble to the surface. That is the essence of the psychological mirror. You do not control them through fear, you allow them to fear what was already hidden inside them. And that kind of fear is the hardest to escape. It follows them into silence. It follows them into sleep. It lingers in every room where your name is not even spoken. That is the true power of restraint. Because at the end of the day, it isn't force that makes you untouchable, it's silence, it's ambiguity, and it's the fear others create for themselves in the void you leave behind. This is the kind of strength that rarely gets praised. Yet it wins wars most people never even see patience. In a world drunk on speed, addicted to instant results, and obsessed with constant reaction, patience isn't just rare. It is revolutionary. Machiavelli understood what the Stoics had practiced for centuries. That time, when wielded wisely, is more devastating than any weapon. The wise don't rush into battle. They don't chase validation. They don't strike simply because they've been provoked. Instead, they wait, they watch, they calculate. Because the one who controls time is the one who ultimately controls the outcome. Most people confuse urgency with effectiveness. They crave revenge now, answers now, results now. But urgency is the enemy of clarity. It clouds judgment, burns energy, and more often than not, plays directly into the hands of your adversary. True strategy requires restraint. When they scream, you remain silent. When they lunge, you step back. And when they think they've cornered you, you let them overreach, exposing more than you ever needed to uncover yourself. That is where time becomes your greatest ally. It isolates. It exposes weakness. It magnifies mistakes. The enemy who believes your retreat signals weakness will inevitably grow arrogant. And arrogance, like rust, corrodes defenses from within. Patience is not passivity. It is poise. It is the clearest signal that you have mastered yourself. Because the one who does not flinch under pressure holds the real power in any confrontation. The Stoics called this self-command. Machiavelli transformed it into method. He didn't strike. First, he let time destabilize his enemies. Let paranoia divide them. Let their missteps pile high until his final action was nothing more than a quiet formality. No rage, no spectacle, just precision delivered in silence. That is the true power of time. To delay is not to lose, it is to see more. To wait is not to retreat, it is to choose your moment. The modern world teaches us to react instantly, to respond immediately, to solve everything now. But between reaction and response lies the sharpest blade. When you slow your pace beneath the noise of others, you begin to see what they miss. While they exhaust themselves chasing surface victories, you notice the fracture lines beneath their foundation. And when the right moment arrives, when your patience has drawn out their weakness, isolated their support, and blinded their clarity, then you act, not out of anger, but out of certainty, not to punish, but to end. That is how patience wins wars the world never even notices. At the end of the day, the one who can wait is the one who controls the clock. And the one who controls the clock is the one who decides when the game is over. Now let's shift to another weapon of quiet dominance, the power of strategic distance. Because sometimes the sharpest move is not attack, but subtraction. Machiavelli understood what the Stoics practiced. Power is not always seized by force. It is often secured by removing what sustains your enemy. A strong opponent is rarely dangerous because of who they are as an individual. Their strength comes from who stands with them, their allies, their networks, their momentum. These are the real weapons you must disarm. As long as they are supported, they are bold. But when the room empties, when the echoes of agreement fade, even the strongest begin to unravel. Isolation is not about dramatic humiliation or public spectacle. It is erosion. It is subtle. You don't draw swords, you pull threads. You let tension creep into their friendships. You allow whispers to grow into doubts. Now the most powerful shifts happen quietly, inside the circle. You don't dismantle them with jarring accusations, you plant seeds of doubt. You let trust corrode quietly in the background, with only gentle questions nudging suspicion further along. And then you wait. One by one, their pillars begin to fall, not in a roar, but in silent absence. They sense it. The pause in response, the shift in tone, the missing support. That's when paranoia takes hold. Even the most confident start to question. And in their mind, they wonder, why is no one standing with me? You've already won the first half of the war, not by breaking them, but by letting doubt do it for you. Your final move isn't loud. It's clean and precise. You don't confront in public, you strike when they're alone, mentally, emotionally, strategically. There's no need to ruin their reputation, just dissolve their influence. Let them fade into irrelevance, not fall in flames. That's the difference between noise and power. One is fleeting, the other is enduring. At the end of the day, real dominance isn't about overpowering someone. It's about ensuring there's no one left to protect them. In life, you don't need to be the loudest voice to be heard. You just need to move with clarity, restraint, and purpose. Power isn't about overpowering others, it's about mastering yourself. Once you stop reacting and start observing, the game shifts. Let patience protect you. Let silence sharpen you. Above all, guard your peace as if it was sacred, because it is. Call to action, engaging, wrap up years of quiet strategy, philosophical depth, and unwavering self-command have led you here, right to the edge of mastery. If this message resonated, move in silence, drop a comment below. And if you're ready to keep learning how to lead with calm, clarity, and calculated strategy, subscribe and stay close. The next lesson might be the one that changes everything.